A nice visit with
Screen,
the
full
conference,
screen.
Linda?
There we
Did you
go.
enjoy
Yeah,
it?
yeah. So basically, I went to the conference I drove down Friday. I was going to go the night before, and I just decided to go down that morning. So it was a pretty long drive, which was fine. And then afterwards, then I went over to Jacqueline. So she from Sharonville is just a little north of Cincinnati. So from there to Columbus, it was I'm trying to think maybe an hour, 40 minutes or so. So basically, yeah, so I spent the night with her and her husband and the baby. And then I got to spend like the next morning with him. Sean's on like a little soccer league. He's like 2.5. And so
Uh,
that was kind of funny because he wants absolutely nothing to do with the other kids. He's too little. But we had a nice time and then we spent the day together and we had a nice meal the evening before and then a nice lunch before I drive. But I packed a lot into 36 hours, but it was good. It was a good conference and it was a good time visiting with Kate and Dan and Sean. So yeah, hopefully, yeah. So this is what I had typed up. Like I said, there was two. I whatever if this is the second one. If not, I can just kind of refer to what I had. But um a little bit of the basic information. I've been going to OGS conferences for many years. I couldn't even tell you how I found out about them, but I've had an interest in family history, since I was a kid. But that's kind of for another time. But anyway, the OGS headquarters, which stands for Ohio Genealogical Society, they're actually in Belleville, Ohio. Belleville's a small city outside of Mansfield. So for us, living in Akron, if you take 71 south down to Columbus, it's about halfway down. I think Mansfield has four exits, and it's either the first or second one furthest north, so you don't go all the way down. But anyway, that's where their headquarters are. They built a new the old headquarters were getting pretty decrepit, so they actually with the donations, I mean, it's paid off. They built a new headquarters maybe 10, 12 years ago. They did a really nice job on that. But anyway, with the conferences, I found a little bit of information online. The first conference was in 1962. Of course, I didn't start going till 20 years later or 40 years later, and I have on here my first OGS conference was about 2003. And the only reason that I know that is because you can buy a syllabus every year, and the oldest syllabus I have is 2003. So that should be pretty accurate the first time. Typically, they're held in late April, early May. It's not always the same weekend, but usually the third or fourth weekend of April. Sometimes they go into the beginning of May. At the beginning, it used to be 2 days. It was typically like a full day Friday and a full day Saturday. And probably in the last maybe 8 to 10 years ago, I've started to see a change with that. So instead of being 2 days, which is considered a full conference, a full day conference would now be Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then they added workshops, which is usually like maybe an hour or two class, and those are on Wednesday. So instead of being 2 days, now it's as many as 3.5 days, which is considered a full conference. Uh, yeah, so that was the first half page. I don't know if you
I'm
could.
sorry, and I forgot I was sharing screen.
Yeah, I mean, I probably have, okay, there we go. And if you can pull that down, or I could even just pull mine
Okay,
up.
I just told me to scroll. That's all.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, if you can scroll, that's good. Yeah, just scroll down to the bottom of that page. That would be fine. That's good. That's good. Okay. Yeah, this is the first copy, and I know that because a couple things are a little out of order alphabetical, but that's okay. We can kind of go with this copy. So typically what they've done in the past is that they would always have the conferences like maybe every other year in Columbus. That was because that's kind of like a central location throughout the state. And I kind of liked when they did that because at the time, I've got kids 10 years apart, so it seems like there was always somebody down at Ohio State. So when Kate and Jacqueline were down there, I would just kind of like spend the night with them. And then when Daniel was down there, I would just usually meet him for supper and then come home for the evening. But typically they would have every other year was in Columbus, and then the years outside of Columbus, they would go to other cities in the state. For whatever reason, they never hit Youngstown. I don't know why they never went to Youngstown, but we had one year we had Akron, we've had Cleveland. Toledo, I've been there twice because actually that was the first time that I met you, Cindy. And then there
right.
was, yeah, and then there was Wilmington, which is a little south of, I think that's at the Xenia exit. And I know that's when I had spent an evening with Kate because I just drove down, and then the next day morning I drove down for the conference. This year was in Sharonville, which is actually a little bit north of Cincinnati. And then there was also one a few years ago in I think Mount Sterling, and that was I think that was also a suburb Cincinnati too, if I'm remembering correctly. So there's been a lot of different ones. For the last before this year, for about 3 or 4 years in a row, we were up in Sandusky, so Kalahari, and that was actually a really nice location, except that they always have a lot going on, so it gets kind of noisy because there's always other events. But typically, what they do is they will have a conference at a convention center, and because it's at a convention center, they'll have like rooms available. And they usually have a block of rooms, so if you want to, if you want to stay for a night or two. I mean, that's not included in the price of the conference. You have to pay for that separate. But that's a nice option if you want to. This year's conference filled up so fast that basically there was a hotel like next door because they had to have like the overflow. And that's where I was going to stay originally till I just decided I'll just drive down in the morning instead. Um, typically, okay, and then
Why don't I show your pictures?
yeah, okay,
Okay.
yeah, if you want to go ahead and show those, we can talk about those a
Yeah.
little bit.
All right. I have to go back to whiteboard for that reason. Let me, uh, let's see. Let me
Do you want
just,
me to,
let me
I can
just
keep
stop
talk.
share.
Oh, okay. Anyway,
I can do that. Let me go back to whiteboard. Oh, yeah, I was having problems with
that's all right.
uploading.
Well, Linda could keep talking while you're
Yeah,
doing that.
I was just going to suggest that. So I'll just do that while, yeah. So technically,
Yeah,
one of the
keep
things I was
talking.
going to mention was basically how they kind of divide up the day. So the conference, it's usually from, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a long day. It's like 7, 8 hours. And so basically, so you'll have within like the different, like the 7 to 8, I think this year was maybe 7 presentations, and I think it was maybe 3 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon, or vice versa. And then within the presentations, it's kind of divided by subject. So, like this year, like they would have a conference with, or a session rather, with like AI, and then one's with DNA, and one's with technology. One might be, immigration, it might be military. And I actually had a number of those on the sheet. So there was actually quite a few of those. Um, Sessions are usually 45 minutes to an hour. We've had some pretty well-known speakers. I mean, you kind of have to be a little like know a little bit about genealogy to recognize some of the names. Um, there was a PBS special, a few years ago. I can't, the name is kind of skipping my head right now, but there were some famous speakers that that they had kind of had on some of the PBS programs, and they've given talks here. So just depending on the area of interest. Cindy, you would liked it because this year they actually had a booth on Michigan. So that was real interesting because I had a great aunt and uncle, and there were some things that I didn't know that he was able to help me with. And sister, they did have a booth also with Pennsylvania. So they had Pennsylvania, Michigan. They also had one on Iowa, which was interesting. I have no relatives in Iowa, but the people were really nice, and you can learn other things. These are some of the pictures that I sent to check. So if you see at the bottom, so every year they have a theme, and the theme year this year was Genealogy Gems, and I really like that. And technically, that's just basically Genealogy Gems just refers to how can I get more help in my research? How can I kind of amp, if you will, amp my research to to find more things to help me. If it's finding people, dates, whatever. But it was just pretty much research to enable you to have a little more success with that. The bottom left was the vendor room. That's not that's not a real good representation because that probably is showing maybe about 2/3. The vending room was pretty good size this year. That's going to depend on the venue. Typically, the vendors are they're very nice. A lot of time, a lot of books. Sometimes it's kind of like something crafty, if you will, that connects to genealogy. But it could be with different organizations, like like the Mayflower, they'll have a booth, or DAR will have a booth, or SAR, which is Sons of the American Revolution. Sometimes it might be ancestry, just different groups that would have connect to family history. The pictures on the right, that was this year's venue. They've never been there before, to the best of my knowledge. That's Sharonville. So, like I said, that's just a little bit north of Cincinnati, but they called it Cincinnati. It was close enough. So the one on the bottom right, that's kind of like the hotel that connected to the venue. And then the top right, that was actually inside where the conferences were. Now, one of the things that I've noticed is when you go to Kalahari and Sandusky, is all on one floor. But one of the things with genealogy, I hope I start seeing more younger people going, because we have a lot of older people, which is fine, but you want to start getting younger people. You want to see this kind of continuing. And there was a lot of steps at this year's, and there were people that were in the scooters. They had a little trouble getting around. And that's a little bit of a concern. I think it's better when they have the venue all on one floor, because if you take into account mobility and the age, I think it makes a little bit more sense, if you will.
Right.
So anyway, so those are the pictures that I had. There's more, but these are the ones that I kind of uploaded. And then, if we have time, Chuck, I could kind of go through some of the rest of the presentation that I had put together, if you have it.
Yeah, well, I can go back to that.
If you can, yeah.
I was going to try to put that picture that actually you were in, but I'll go back to
Yeah,
share.
it's okay. That wasn't that great of a picture. So the one just with the sign, that's fine. I don't care.
We're
I just wanted to give you a little overview here.
And we're going to share the screen.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you for doing this.
No problem.